You're listening to the Beyond Measurements and Image podcast, where we build healthier lifestyles, elevate your well-being, and transform lives. Welcome to BMI.
I'm your host, Dr. Drew Crawford. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and obesity medicine specialist. Thank you for joining me today on Beyond Measurements and Image. Today's going to be a little different. A lot of the podcasts have been focused around science, behind diet and nutrition, exercise, and the need to, participate and try to do this in a most logical and scientific fashion. And I think to some extent on the interviews with different guests, we've talked about the need for consistency and commitment. But I just think one other thing that really needs to be stressed, particularly in 2026, is the fact that when you commit, a lot of times you have to do hard things. You have to do things that you just don't want to do, things that are uncomfortable. But I think it's important to recognize that and maybe recognize that early as you're making the commitment, because there's so many ways out. In this day and age, there are so many shortcuts, and it seems like everybody gets a participation medal, and it's okay. It's just socially acceptable to not excel. And the thing about it is we're designed to excel, but you have to do different things. You can't just do what everybody else is doing and expect to get the same results. So let me tell you what brought this on. I'm going to talk about the LA Marathon and a decision that they made that I think is not a great decision. But I want to preface that with a couple things. One, I really don't like to listen to podcasts or watch YouTube videos where they're negative. There's a few where everything is, don't do this, don't do that. This is what they're telling you. This is all a lie. I don't like that. I want this podcast to be positive, and this is what we think is best, and this is the way to go. I don't like the idea of being negative. That being said, what I'm going to say is kind of negative. It's about a decision made by the McCourt Foundation, which runs the LA Marathon. So before I say anything negative about the McCourt Foundation, let me just tell you a little bit about them. So the McCourt Foundation runs the LA Marathon, and their mission statement says that the McCourt Foundation is focused on curing neurologic disease and empowering communities to build a healthier world. We do this by focusing on 3 pillars: research, education, and partnership. And you read their website, they do a lot of community good for our country. It says they've donated over $7.2 million to fund neurologic research. It looks like Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston is a big recipient of that. They promote educational forums for people affected by neurologic disease, particularly like ALS, MS, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's disease. All of these, which I have a bit of a connection to, right? My mom had bad dementia. As a gastroenterologist, we put in a lot of tubes, but a lot of feeding tubes, particularly for patients with ALS. We have an ALS community here, and I've gone to speak to them. Consequently, I've just seen maybe a disproportionate number of ALS patients compared to some of my peers. And we put these tubes in. And I think I've shared with you, one of my sons has a PEG tube. And so, I kind of get it, not only from a doctor perspective, but from a caretaker perspective. In addition, my one son has a traumatic brain injury. And so there's a lot of connections that I can see to this McCourt Foundation and what they do for our society. So this is not to disparage them or ASICS, which is their title sponsor. I love the fact that they've been so good to neurologic research and to help build a healthier world, right? Which is a big focus of even what we're doing. So that being said, this is not anything against the McCourt Foundation, but the decision that was made, and I don't know exactly how close the McCourt Foundation was to run it, but it looks like they're basically the board that runs the marathon. So the weather was going to be kind of hot this past Sunday in LA. I think they said that maybe it was going to get up into the high 80s. They made a decision, instead of canceling the marathon, they were going to give people an out at mile 18. So if you were running and you just had a bad day, is what they said, you could take the exit at mile 18 and still get your finisher's medal. Now, I'm assuming that on all the race logs, it's going to show that you only finished 18 miles. But normally, if you start a marathon and you don't cross the finish line at 26.2 miles, then you get what's called a DNF, did not finish. And there's not necessarily any shame in that, right? If you started a marathon and you ran 18 miles and that's all you had and you quit, well, that's just how that is. Some days are just like that. But I just don't love that idea, right? I don't love the idea of giving people the equivalent of a participation medal, right? Because how about the ones that did 26.2 and they got the same medal?
And more importantly, how about the people that trained 26.2 miles and they quit at 18 because that was an option? And today's Monday. Today's the day following the marathon. I can't help but think that those people that quit at mile 18 woke up disappointed in themselves. And so my point of this is that when you make a decision and you commit to something, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's weight loss, increasing exercise, setting a marathon PR, 5K PR, whatever it is, it's going to suck, right? It's going to hurt. And when you get into the difficult part of it, which I would argue mile 18 is where it starts to get difficult in a marathon. If you do that, your brain is constantly telling you to stop, right? You have this thing called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that basically wants you to stop. It wants to protect the organism being you. And so it does things to try to slow you down. And it tries to convince your body that it's okay to slow down, right? It's that part of your brain when you're running and you have all these excuses. It's hot, I'm tired, my legs are tired, I can't go, blah, blah, blah. It's all of those things. It's designed, right? Your brain is wired to protect the species. And your brain always has the benefit of knowing what you're thinking, right? Because it is knowing what you're thinking. And so it plays all these games on you. When one of my sons was running cross country, we had a thing, and it was called F.Y.A, fuck your amygdala. And so I would run alongside of him, and I would just yell F.Y.A. It would not be a real good look if I was yelling fuck your amygdala to a high school kid. But what it was a conversation that he and I had. And so when you're running, I was just like, don't worry about that. Your brain's going to tell you that you need to slow down. And your brain's going to tell you all these things because it's trying to protect you. But the reality of it is you can push right through that. And that's a fine line. Everybody's got to find their way. But F.Y.A was what we went with. And so I just think when you're running 26.2, you've trained for 26.2 miles. And then you get to mile 18, right? Your glycogen stores are depleted or awful close to being depleted at that point. And if you are just looking for an excuse and there's an off-ramp right there, you might take it. So I don't love the idea of giving people the off-ramp. Now, if there's consequences with it, I think that's okay. Some days you just don't have it, and that's okay. But if you trained and there is no medal at the end of your race, there's no certificate saying you finished the race, all your friends are going to get on and they're going to look and see a DNF and say, what does that mean? If there's some consequences, you might push through that, right? Maybe you didn't get the time you wanted, but you might push through it. But when they give you an off-ramp, I just think the world has got too many off-ramps, right? We need to raise the bar. We need to set high expectations for each other, and we need to set high expectations for ourselves and then not disappoint ourselves. It's horrible if you make a promise to somebody and disappoint them. I get that. But the worst thing is if you make a promise or a commitment to yourself and you don't follow through on that and you disappoint yourself. The world's just getting weak, right? And we just can't do that. Another problem with taking the off-ramp is you train your mind to take the off-ramp or you train your mind to stay the course. So let me give you a great example of that, just a personal example. So one of my sons and I, a few years ago, we decided to do a 100-mile ride. And like on bike rides, a lot of times like the Century ride, the 100-mile ride is actually like 102 or 108 miles or whatever. We really hadn't trained very much. I'd say maybe we hadn't trained at all, to be honest with you. Now, we're runners. We're in relatively good shape, but we decided we're going to ride 100 miles. Well, that's great. I think we both had it in us. We've ridden 100-mile rides multiple times, right? So we know that we had it in us. But that day, I got to admit, it was hot. I mean, it was so hot and it was hilly. We're riding and we got to about mile 75 and my son's like, I'm done. I don't have any more in me. And to be honest with you, he said it. I probably wouldn't have been smart enough to say it, but I was like, I get it, and we got nothing to prove and it's hot and maybe our amygdala's just got the best of us. And we opted out, got off our bikes, called my wife. She came and picked us up. Not a great look. I think that's the only ride that I didn't finish. So anyhow, not a great moment, but we made the decision. We did it. There was no finisher's medal for doing that, right? There was a lot of shame every time everybody's like, hey, how'd you do on the ride? Yeah, we quit 75. And, there was consequences for what we did, but we owned those consequences. So then fast forward a couple of years, we really hadn't ridden much in the interval. Some, but not like that. So then this past year, we went and did a 120-mile gravel ride. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. We really didn't train at all. We hadn't done much gravel riding and it was tough. So we're riding and it's not hot, but it's hilly. This is up in Kansas and it's hilly and it's hot and blah, 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 right? But the thing is, everybody else is riding. It was hilly and hot for them too. So it wasn't any different for us. But about mile 90, my son starts making some noise like, I think I'm done at 100. Now, this is not like him. I know I just said he did it at 75. Now he's doing it at 90. Sounds like he's prone that way. He's absolutely not. But it was tough. We were undertrained. Maybe we didn't have our nutrition dialed in. There was a lot of things. But he was kind of starting to voice that, man, he thought when he got to about mile 100, he was done. It was a 120-mile race. So I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything out loud. There was another one of my buddies with us, Ryan. And I just thought, we're not stopping at 100, right? That's not going to happen. And it wasn't to be punitive. And I didn't even say those words. I never said that out loud. But I knew that we had stopped on the last race at mile 75. And so at this race, if we stopped at 100, we begin to tell ourselves, we have this internal dialogue with ourselves that when you get hot and when you get uncomfortable and when it doesn't feel right, it's okay to quit. But you could also have the same internal dialogue that says, listen, the difference between the guy that finishes and the guy that doesn't is just overcoming this negative self-talk. You have to just overcome it. And so there was no conversation about it. When he said that, I was like, I hope we don't have to stop at 100. And that was it. And we made some adjustments, and the last 20 miles was uncomfortable, and I think the three of us finished last, but that's okay. We finished. The importance of it, though, wasn't that we finished. The importance of it is that the lesson that you learn is that when you're uncomfortable, it's okay. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and you have to push through those. Because if you just do what everybody else does, then it doesn't set you apart. There were people that went out and did that 120-mile race probably in half the time that we did it. But we got it done. We got it done, and we all felt better about it. I would have been so disappointed if we had stopped on that race, and I know he would have too. Again, this isn't about us. It's just about the fact that we talk on this podcast about the need for good nutrition, and we talk about the science, and we talk about all the things. But the one thing that sometimes we don't talk about is when we're committed to a goal and we're executing it, it's going to get tough at some point, right? It's going to get tough on a run at mile 18. Your glycogen stores are depleted. You're hot. You're going to have to push through that, right? The strong are going to push through that. If you're on a ride and you're getting tired and it's uncomfortable and your butt's sore from sitting in that saddle and all those things, so is everybody else's, right? You're not any different. You got to push through. And same as with a diet. You're on a diet, you're 3 months in, you don't feel like you're making progress even though you're kind of sticking to your plan. You want to fall off the wagon and eat a lot. You got to stick with it, right? It sucks. Your friends are eating pizza and you're eating a salad or whatever, they're eating pizza and you're eating protein. It's just a matter of you have to make a mental commitment. Again, I don't like to be negative, and I think that the McCourt Foundation does a great job, and they just are really philanthropic for the neurologic community, and I think they do a lot of good. And the decision they made might have been only based on the welfare of the runners. I don't have any doubt that they thought they were doing the best thing, and I don't want to second guess what they did. I just think that you can't have an off-ramp. You have to commit. If you commit and you don't make it, that's okay, but there's consequences. You shouldn't get a finisher's medal if you didn't finish. Right? You shouldn't get a participation trophy just because you participated. Well, maybe you should get a participation trophy. It shouldn't be set up that way. You have to separate. To have winners, unfortunately, you have to have losers. And for whatever reason, we decided that we don't want to raise children that way anymore. And that's not right. And it's okay. Sometimes you lose. In fact, most of the time you lose. If you got it right and you won more than half the time, you'd be a millionaire in the stock market. You'd go out to Vegas, we're just prone to get things wrong more often than right, and that's okay. But commit and then execute. If there's off-ramps that are offered to you, bypass them. Leave them alone. I promise you, maybe not everybody that took that 18-mile option is disappointed, but I bet an awful lot of them are, right? Because they didn't train for 18 miles. They trained for 26.2. They committed in their mind probably 4 months ago, and they put in the time. And then it got tough. Glycogen stores got depleted. They got hungry. They got thirsty. They got uncomfortable. And somebody was sitting there saying, hey, it's okay. It's all right. It's hot today. Don't worry about that. Come on, here's a medal. I just don't think we ought to do that. And this isn't really about the LA Marathon. They can do what they want. I'm sure the runners on that board are probably far better runners than I ever thought about being. So this isn't directed at them. It's just society. You just have to commit and you have to move forward and we have to do our best. And sometimes it falls short and that's okay. But when it falls short, there's consequences. And those consequences help to reinforce the fact that we didn't get it right. And they tell us to go back and do what you got to do to get it right. And when you make decisions to quit or to alter your plan, if you continue to make those decisions, you're going to train yourself that it's okay to stop short. But if you just push through, you'll train yourself just the same to keep going and to finish and to complete and to find success. So that's all I've got. I know it sounds a little bit preachy and I don't mean it that way, but I just want everybody to know that when you're doing these things that we talk about on this podcast, they're hard, but hard things are good. Hard things make us better, and off-ramps aren't in our best interest, no matter who offers them. So that's all I've got. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week on the BMI Podcast.
I'm your host, Dr. Drew Crawford. Join me next week as we go beyond measurements and image to build healthier lifestyles and elevate your well-being on the BMI Podcast. See you then.